Okay, well, this is week 9 of our Women of the Bible story. If I sound a little bit nervous, it's because I kind of am. I'm in a room full of empty chairs and just talking to you on the camera, and it's just a little bit weird. So I hope I don't ramble either because of being nervous, but I'm going to get through that. It's going to get better as I go on. Anyways, today we're talking about Rebekah. I really kind of came to love this story as I was studying it. Throughout the biblical account, we see kind of different snippets of Rebekah's life. Each snippet just kind of shows a different side of her personality, or maybe just some of the things she struggled with as a female, and then especially as a mom. So while she's from a totally different culture, a different time, I still found so much of her story just really relatable to us today, which of course we love that, right? Her story has excitement, it has mystery, romance, it has drama, it has sin. I'm just going to go through the story as it's presented in Genesis, and I'll read some verses here and there, and then maybe just talk about the things that stuck out to me, or different commentaries that I read. Maybe they brought something out that I had not thought of before. So that's just basically what I'm going to be sharing. I tend to be a little bit more on the skeptical side as a person, and while that makes it so I don't always necessarily believe the best of somebody, I see two sides of the story sometimes. So I think that's going to come out a little bit here too. And I just did a lot of questioning. I have a lot of questions. A lot of this story just has so many things that you think about. Well, was it like this or was it like this? And we just don't know because the Bible only tells us, the important stuff, obviously. But it just made me do a lot of thinking. Just been doing a lot of thinking, so it's been good. But anyways, we're going to start Genesis 24. This story picks up, Sarah's been dead for 3 years, and now Abraham is talking to his servant, and he wants to find a bride for Isaac, and he has two things. He says, I want you to go get a bride for Isaac. She can't be a Canaanite, okay, and she needs to be from my family. And the servant says, we're in verse 5 of chapter 24, the servant said to him, well, perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land. Must then I take your son back to the land from whence you came? And Abraham's like, no, God called me out of there. Don't take him back with you. So then in don't take Isaac over there. But then in verse 8, Abraham says, but if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you'll be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So, okay. She needs to come here, and you can't take Isaac with you. So can you imagine the servant? So, okay, no pressure. It's got to go to this place that's 500 miles away. It's going to take me about a month to get there. And I got to find a woman willing to travel back with me, a stranger, total stranger. She's got to come with me on a month-long journey. I'm a stranger. She's got to be willing to marry the man she's never met. But if she's not willing to do all that, then I'm just going to have to say, okay, well, forget it, and Isaac just won't get married. No pressure. Okay, but he loads up these 10 camels. He's got his men with them. He's got some expensive gifts he's going to take with him. He travels this whole month-long journey. He gets to this well outside of the city. He tells the camels, gets the camels to kneel down, and he prays. Okay, verses 12 through 14, it says, and he said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show me steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I'll water your camels, let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. So who is Rebekah right now? Rebekah right here is an answer to prayer. Because she must have been on her way to this well before the servant was even praying, because it says in the very next verse, before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, here she is, right? She comes down and she's got her water jug. So God was already in the details of preparing her to be there before he even prayed that she would show up. And he asked for this sign that she would water the camels also, which wasn't like, it wasn't a miraculous thing that he was asking God to do, but he was just make it obvious, Lord. This would be normal for her to give water to the stranger, but not necessarily normal to water the camel. So it would have just been an obvious, Lord, this is who she is, right? So he watches her fill up her water jug, and then he runs over to her, asks for a drink. Verse 18 says, sorry to find it. She said, "Drink, my lord," and she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all of his camels. You know how much water a camel can drink? I mean, a thirsty camel, I don't know how thirsty these camels were, but if they decided to drink to their full capacity, that was like drinking 20 to 25 gallons of water for one camel. Excuse me. Sorry. So if one camel can drink 20 to 25 gallons of water, how many camels did he have? He had 10 camels. So 250 gallons of water. And it says like she's just rushing back from the trough to the spring, and she's just doing all this work. And how much do you think how big is her jar? She's carrying this jar of water. How much do you think she can hold at a time? I don't know, 2 gallons maybe, a gallon. That's like, an hour's work, 2 hours work. She's just sitting here. What's the servant doing? Verse 21. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. I'm reading that. Dude, like, you prayed, if she says this, then she's the one. Well, she said that. So why is he wondering if she actually did, if she's the one, if she's actually doing what she said she was going to do? Maybe she said, "I will draw water for your camels until they finish drinking." So was she going to actually keep doing what she said she was going to do? Or was he just like in total shock? Like, wait, God, I just prayed for that, and did you just answer it? Have you ever had that happen where you pray and then God answers it so like right away that you're just like a little bit in shock? I can remember being a little girl, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. And I wanted to make some Easter baskets for my sisters. They were 3 and 4. I wanted to make an Easter basket. I had cut out pictures in a magazine, and I glued them all into like this scrapbook so they could look through it. I don't know if I had toys or anything in there, but I know I needed candy. I need candy for an Easter basket. But how? I didn't have any money, so how am I going to get candy for this Easter basket? So I remember I went to my room, went upstairs to my room, and I closed the door, and I got down and I prayed on my knees that God would provide some money or some candy so I could fill this Easter basket with this candy. And I don't remember if it was before I finished praying or I prayed or I said amen and then stood up. I don't remember exactly, but I heard my dad calling me down from downstairs. So I went down and I met my dad at the bottom of the stairs, and I didn't say anything. He just opened up his wallet. He took out his wallet, he opened up, and he handed me $2 bills, and he said, "I just wanted to thank you for all the work you've been doing around the house lately." Okay. We didn't get an allowance which is fine. I'm not, whatever. But that was just so out of the blue, right? It was a good thing I was doing all that work, but anyways. Okay. So I took that money and I went back up to my room and I closed the door and I was like, wait, God, you answered my prayer? Like, you heard me and you answered my prayer, and it was perfect because we had a convenience store down the road from us. They sold candy for 2 bags for $1, so it was perfect for the Easter basket. But in any case, I just remember being in like shock, like, oh, prayer worked. I got what I needed. So is that the place where this servant was? Was he just in total shock? Like, I prayed for this and you actually answered, and here I am just gonna stand here and watch her. Okay, so he watches her. When the camels finished drinking, we're in verse 22 now, the man took a gold ring, took these bracelets, he goes over her and he gives her all this jewelry. Like, was that a thank you gift? I'm not sure. I don't know what exactly was going on with that. But what I do know, at this point, she doesn't know who he is. She just knows that he's a stranger. She's given him this water. He gives her these jewelry. She doesn't know she's passed some kind of a test, right? She confirms then that she's part of Abraham's family. And then he just kind of like lets loose with praise, thanking God that he has made this way prosperous. Because now I think in his mind, this is confirmed, right? This is who God had directed him to. She goes home, and now Laban comes on the scene. He sees the gifts. It's mentioned, like one of the first things about Laban is that he notices the jewelry on her. She tells him what happened, and I mean, we know about Laban from later chapters, so it's kind of just easy to assume that was, oh, he's a wealthy man, like he's worth our time. Let's go get him, let's bring him in, let's show him hospitality. Yeah, I mean, who knows, maybe we can benefit from this somehow. I'm being totally judgmental here, but maybe that's what he was thinking. Let's see. So the servant comes in, he gets cleaned up, but he doesn't want to eat until he has told them his mission, right? He says, I'm Abraham's servant. Abraham has been blessed with flocks, with herds, with silver, with gold. By the way, he has this son who's going to inherit absolutely everything he has, and I'm supposed to find a bride for him, and Abraham gave me a checklist of all the things that this bride is supposed to, she's supposed to be all these things. I prayed this prayer. She passed the test in the prayer. She meets up the point on the checklist, so can she go with me and marry my master's son? And let's read in verse 50. We're still in chapter 24. Verse 50. Then Laban and Bethuel, who that would be her brother and her dad, answered and said, this thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. Okay. So then he gives Rebekah more jewelry and some nice clothes, and he gives the same to her brother and to her mother. And the next day, he wants to get going here. We got a month-long journey. This is what the Lord wants. Why should we wait? They're like, no. Like, we're not ready to let her go yet. From a mom's perspective, I can understand that. One day you have your daughter, and the next day she's supposed to go, and you're probably never going to see her again. The brother's perspective, again, I'm just wondering, is he trying to get more out of this man here? I mean, maybe not. Maybe he just wanted his sister home. And he's like, no, we really need to get going. So verse 57, they said, this is the mom and the brother this time. They said, let us call the young woman and ask her. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. Why did she say, I will go? This is when I don't know. Maybe was she in on all those conversations where they realized it was of the Lord? Did she know it was of the Lord? Did she believe it was of the Lord? Did she want to do what the Lord wanted? Was she also maybe motivated by, I'm going to have all this wealth. I'll be well taken care of. We know Laban, like I said, from like what he turns out. Maybe he's not this way now, but maybe she wasn't happy living at home. I don't know. Maybe that's why she spent all that time watering the camels. She didn't want to go home. I don't know. Maybe this story just says, I will go, because we really need to just trust that she just wanted to go. She was willing. So who was Rebekah right now? Rebekah was willing. She was willing to leave everything she knew to live in a strange land. She was willing to leave her family knowing she'd probably never see them again. The only thing she got to take with her, it says she took a nurse in one part, and later it talks about the women who were with her. So we don't know how many maidens she took with her. And ultimately, I guess her motive doesn't really matter. The point is that she was willing, she went, and God's will was accomplished, and God definitely got the glory through it. So she gets up on these camels, and she's going to go 500 miles on these camels. Then a silly thing enters my head. I think, well, good thing she was so kind to those camels and took care of them, because maybe they remembered her. I don't know. Are they like horses? Do camels remember people? Anyway, they took care of her on the way home. So, okay. Back to the scene of them leaving. Her family gives her a blessing as they leave. This is in verse 60. And then it says, and they, which is her family, They blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him." That's a very kind of weird thing to say until you realize that they're quoting what God had told Abraham when God promised blessing of offspring to Abraham in chapter 22 with after the sacrificing of Isaac. So maybe they were just totally aware of the promise that God had gave Abraham. And they understood then that Rebekah would be the one to carry the line, the lineage. She would be part of that blessing. So again, whether or not they had good motives, whether or not she had the correct motives, she had a choice and she was willing. So what do we, taking a step out of that, looking at our own lives, what are we needing to be willing to do? What do we say we're willing to do, but we don't actually follow through? She said she was willing and she actually did it. And if she did have the wrong motives, well, how many things do we do out of the wrong motives or the wrong actions? We go about it the totally wrong way, but God still chooses to use us. What things do we dread doing, but we do anyway just because we have to? Not gonna lie, me standing up here in front of doing all this isn't exactly in my comfort zone. So I'm not exactly, I don't know, was I willing? We do hard things sometimes, right? But God still chooses to use us, okay? So now they're traveling back. We're in this part of Rebekah being a bride. The romance begins. Let's go to verse 63. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field to meet us?" And the servant said, "It's my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant then told Isaac all the things that had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. There's so many things I think about in that little section. He came out to meet her. It's kind of cute. He was excited to see her. She covered herself. There's a couple different things about that veil. She covers herself. It could be a modesty or a submission. But she wasn't doing that with the servant, obviously, around the servant. So it wasn't necessarily just because he was a man. This was her intended, which is something that it could signify as like a betrothal. Like, he is I'm engaged to marry him. It's also the first mention of marital love in the Bible. Which brings up a thought in my head that it's interesting that with Isaac and Rebekah, we never hear about Isaac taking another woman, concubines or handmaidens or another wife. There's no other record of that. They appear to be monogamous. Even though, he grew up like that. His dad had done that. Her grandpa had done that. Both of their children were going to do that. That was obviously their culture. So I don't know what it would take from that other than it's nice. It's nice. At this time, Isaac is 40 years old when he got married to Rebekah. You think of his family that he grew up in. I think that he probably would have known he was the promised son through Abraham and Sarah. So then he probably knew, the line's going to have to continue through us, so we're going to have a child. How long are we going to have to wait for a child? His parents had sure waited a long time. They were both old when he was born. Or does he wonder if they're going to be that old before they have a baby? How long are they going to have to wait? Because who is Rebekah at this point? Rebekah is barren. And she's barren for 20 years. 20 years. And this, not necessarily the 20 years part, because I think in our culture, if we're barren for 20 years, that's not going to happen, right? But the idea of infertility is, wow, do so many women relate to her, right? Or they relate to this. And After 20 years of waiting, did they start to doubt? Were they doubting God's promise? Is this ever going to happen? Did you really mean what you said? Are you really going to continue it through us? Was there that temptation of another woman in there? You just all the things you wonder. Because after 20 years, that's a long time. Oh, and here's the other thing. Oh, you think about how long Abraham and Sarah had waited. Well, going back to Abraham, at this point, Abraham's remarried. He's remarried, and they had 6 more children. So was Rebekah, was she around them? Did she see this happening? Did she see this old Abraham? More kids, they keep coming, and she doesn't have anything. But whereas we hear of a lot of other women in the Bible that struggle with infertility, we don't hear about Rebekah's struggle with this. In my own personal struggle with this, it was only 4 years compared to 20, right? 4 years. And I can remember during that time, praying for more children and reading in Matthew 6:33. It talks about asking, seeking, knocking. And the footnotes in my Bible brought out the fact that it has the intent of saying, keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. It's not like a one-time thing. Just keep bringing your request before the Lord. That was a real precious promise to me. So you think about with them, it says that Isaac prayed for Rebekah to become pregnant. Some commentaries even think it might mean Isaac prayed with Rebekah, that maybe they prayed together, but however it means, I highly doubt this was a one-time prayer and then she got pregnant. This was probably something where they kept praying, they kept asking, they kept knocking, and in 20 years in God's time, then he answered, okay? So now she's pregnant. And it's not what she expected. Let's read verse 22. We're now in chapter 25. Chapter 25, 22, she's pregnant, and the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. I had to look this up in lots of different versions and stuff because I have no idea what she was talking about. If this is thus, why is this happening to me? What does that even mean? In all these different translations I read, sometimes they said it can mean if this is the way I am, if I'm actually pregnant, or if I'm feeling this way, why am I still alive? Why does this hurt so much? What is going on? Why am I in pain? However it's meant, it was obvious that she was very uncomfortable. And she asked why. She went to the Lord and asked why. And I love that God didn't rebuke her for asking why that we know of. We only have what's recorded that he said here, but he let her ask why and he answered. We don't get the answer necessarily the way she did, but I think it's kind of comforting to know that there are times it's okay to ask why. Why are we going through this painful time? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? And then he does give us answers in the Bible. We just actually have to go look for them. But for her, how gracious and precious and loving of the Lord to give her this answer. He just came and spoke to her. How cool is that? Because he does the people that he chooses to speak to in the Bible. Those are very precious times. Anyways, okay. So in the next verse in 23, it says, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Well, was that an answer to her? If she understood, the reason I wonder if she understood is because in the next verse, it says that when she gave birth, it was behold, it was twins. It was a surprise. But if she did understand more than one, the concept of more than one in her belly, what would that have done to her mama heart to hear you finally have these babies and they're not going to get along. They're not going to love each other. When I was going through my fertility struggles, this was something, or I don't remember if Jane gave us this during that or if I just already had it, but if you remember, if you're in Heritage Keepers, she gave us these little pamphlets, right? It's how to pray for your children I know we can get copies of this. You ask her, she makes copies. I obviously have a copy, can make copies. But anyways, each day you go through it and it gives you something to pray for your children. And I can remember when we only had Carson and we were praying for more kids, you get to Wednesday, and the 5th thing to pray for is that our children would love each other. So I always changed it, and I said, please give Carson a sibling to love so that they can love each other and they can get along. Which is obviously the desire of every mom's heart, that their children are going to get along together. So for her to hear, or maybe once they were born she understood, I don't know, but she knew they weren't going to get along. And also, I wonder if they knew about twins back then. I mean, before that. How much experience did she have about twins before that? This is our first recorded set of twins, but, you know, surely someone had had twins before then, but maybe not. I don't know. Did she understand the bond that twins typically have? It's more than just regular siblings. I have twin brothers, and they have very different interests, they have very different talents, they have different personalities, but they have a very close bond. They think a lot the same. Like, they sent us a screenshot of a text conversation they had between the two of them just the other day. They sent it, and they had both, in the middle of their conversation, they had both said the same thing and then sent the text at the same time, so they literally both said the same thing. And they screenshot it and sent it to the rest of us siblings and said, you guys have no idea how often this actually happens. Like, they're connected. Even they both live in 2 different states right now, but go throughout their life, they are always involved in the same programs and the same, because they're the same age. But there's just something special about twins like that we know. But hers weren't going to even be like that. It wasn't even like brothers that didn't get along. These were twins. It'd be kind of hard to accept that. So now what was Rebekah? Like, her twins weren't going to be in a bond. They were going to be divided, literally divided. So we can assume that now she was confused. She didn't understand, probably. Okay. So now the boys are born, they grow up. Abraham dies when they're 15. We have the birthright story. They move because of a famine. And now here we have the story with Abimelech. I don't know if you remember that story, but they're traveling through. Rebekah's a very beautiful woman, and Isaac is afraid for these strange men that they will see her beauty. They will want her, and so they'll kill him, and it sounds super familiar, like we've heard this story before, because it's the exact same thing that his dad did with Sarah. Maybe he thought, hey, it worked for my dad, I don't know. Kind of showed a lack of trust, I think, there. Lack of trust that God wouldn't take care of him. But it's kind of cute, actually, how they're caught. I don't know. I don't know why this story is in the Bible. I really don't, and I don't even have an application to tell you, but I just think it's really cute. Because we're in chapter 26, verse 8. Make sure I have the right one. Yes, okay, so he says, they've been living there for a while. They've already come through. It's already happened where he lied about her being his wife. It says, when he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of the window, like not even like a servant or something, the actual king, okay. So he looked out the window, and he saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, she's your wife. That's not your sister. How could you say she's your sister? And Isaac said, because I thought lest I should die because of her. So in any case, it was very obvious that was not his sister. We know in Abraham and Sarah there was a sister thing, so I don't know how he knew the difference other than it was just obvious. The Hebrew word here, when it talks about Isaac laughing with Rebekah, the Hebrew verb there implies that they were laughing while caressing affectionately. So they had enough PDA going on that it was obvious. And like I said, I don't know why or what to even say about that other than I think it's adorable. So they didn't necessarily show a trust in God by showing the truth, but God still protected them. Later it says Abimelech, he kind of freaks out about it, like, we could have really messed up here because we didn't know the truth. So then he warned all the people, saying, whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So they were protected, even though they didn't necessarily have the right actions in doing all that. So, okay, moving on. They move again. Isaac goes through some drama with these wells. We're going to skip over that because Rebekah's not really mentioned in that. We get to the end of the chapter, and Esau and Jacob, they're now 40. I don't know if does anyone else forget that they're the same age as at this point in the story? Like, I kind of picture Esau as a lot older, but they're twins, okay? Okay, so Esau marries these Hittite women. It says they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah were heartbroken that he had married these Hittite women. Yet Esau was still Isaac's favorite, right? He was the firstborn, and that would have been that was important back then. Even though if you think about it, Isaac wasn't the firstborn, and Abraham wasn't the firstborn, Jacob wasn't the firstborn, but Esau was still the favorite. And thinking about it we are aware that Rebekah knew that Jacob was the one chosen to be the leader here. He was the chosen by God. But did Isaac know that? Did he understand that? Did he ignore that? Did he forget about it? Did he not accept it? Because now we're at the famous scene of the deception, right? Where Isaac tells Esau, go find some game. I want to eat and I want to bless you because I think I'm going to die soon. I can't see very well, even though we find out he lives quite a bit longer. But anyway, I can't see very well, so I want to go ahead and bless you before I die. One commentary I read said that this whole blessing thing was probably more typically done as a public event. Yet Isaac, it seems as though he wants to do it with just him and Esau, which makes me think that he was trying to be deceptive or secretive about it. Like he didn't really want Jacob to receive it. Jacob wasn't his favorite. Jacob wasn't the firstborn. I don't know. I can only assume again. And Rebekah's listening in. She's like, hey, Jacob, while Esau's out hunting, go kill me a goat. 2 goats, but anyway, I'm going to make this food for your father, and then you go in and receive the blessing. So now we have Rebekah taking control. Why didn't she talk to Isaac about this? Had she never told him? Maybe he was no longer approachable. Their relationship wasn't like that where he could do that. Maybe she was freaking out. Jacob's not going to receive what is due him. I know that God wants him to have this, and he's not going to receive it. Or, well, God's not going to be able to work this out. Even if Isaac gives him the blessing, God surely can't. Like, why is Isaac's blessing? I don't know why Isaac's blessing was such a big deal. It's obviously a cultural thing that I'm ignorant of. But they put such an emphasis on that they weren't even willing to be like, well, God could still work around that, right? I don't know. But it's turned on her control freak side, And that's not relatable at all. Women are kind of known for manipulative antics to control the situation, aren't we? And then you throw in one of our kids into the mix and we just like, Mama Bear. Mama Bear can come out. We can get protective. Want to make sure our kids get what they deserve when they've worked for something or when, I don't know. We just always are the best for our kids. But how much are we trusting God with our kids? Was she trusting God with Jacob? And I would say it's very obvious that she wasn't, that she was trying to go, she didn't see how God could work that out, or maybe she forgot that maybe Jacob was just such her favorite that she just wanted to make sure that he received this. I don't know. But in what ways do we not trust God with our kids? Or how about our words here? Just picking on that one because that tends to be a very way that women are very manipulative. We tend to be very manipulative with our words. Do we know just the right words to say to make what we want happen? Do we know just how to make that person feel guilty enough to come around to our side? Do we know how to put them on guilt trips? Okay. And I feel, this is one I'm kind of glad you're not sitting right here. And I'm just as guilty. I'm not saying I'm not, but I can, okay. So now we have Rebekah putting her son in a position that ignores God's hand and his ability to accomplish his will. And I've already talked about that part in my notes, so I just got ahead of myself, but that's okay. And even Jacob he was kind of worried, like, Mom, how are we going to pull this off? What if instead of it working out, he ends up putting a curse on me because he finds out it's not me and I get punished for that? And Rebekah goes so far as to say, well, you just do what I say, let the curse fall on me. If it doesn't work out, I'll take the consequence. But the thing is that it did work out. It did work. It worked great. And she still took the very hard consequences because of their actions. If you think of the four of them and their relationships with each other, and obviously there's already some problems, the dynamics, some strained relationships, some not functional relationships, some problems there, but this didn't help anything. I didn't finish the story. I'm kind of assuming that you know the story where Jacob does receive the blessing because they were able to fool Isaac, and Esau comes in and finds out that there's nothing left for him, and he gets very angry. And even it talked about Isaac trembling. Like, was he angry? Was he upset? It wasn't good. It gets so bad that Rebekah finds out that once Isaac is dead, Esau plans to kill Jacob. And if she wasn't panicking before this, she would definitely thrown into panic mode now, and she wants to send Jacob away. Chapter 27, verse 43 says, "Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you've done to him. And then I'll send and bring you from there, because why should I be bereft of you both in one day?" And now, so she tells that to Jacob. Now she wants to go and talk to Isaac. She's thrown into such a panic. She needs to make sure that Jacob is safe, or maybe she comes up with this idea to talk to him about, it's not just about sending Jacob away. It goes back to these Hittite women, and remember that they are both on the same page about these Hittite women. They both didn't like that Esau had married the Hittite woman, so she can appeal to that, as well as throw in the fact that how it's affecting her, that he's married to these Hittite women. So she says, the last chapter in verse 27, "Then Rebekah says to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite woman. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women from the land, then what good will be my life to me? Like, it will be so bad if he does this." And she knew that he didn't like it either. So we get into the next chapter, and Isaac calls Jacob in and says, just don't take one of these Canaanite women. Go, get out of here. She didn't want to tell him the truth. Was she protecting Esau? Was she protecting Isaac from being devastated by Esau's actions or plan, Was she embarrassed about telling him the truth, confessing that? In any case, it was deceptive. It wasn't the full truth. So deceiving her husband, well, we never do that, right? We never would do that. And obviously we should never deceive your husband on big things, but I'm definitely also guilty of the small things, like, well, it's all sin, but another topic. I can hear my husband, well, how much was that? Oh, it was on clearance. I got a really good deal. It was on clearance. I did get a good deal, but I don't want to tell him how much I spent. So it wasn't a lie, but it wasn't full truth. So yeah, how do we deceive our husbands or deceive people in general? How are we deceptive? So Isaac agrees to his plan, sends Jacob away. And we never have another time recorded where Rebekah sees Jacob ever again. She was willing to go through all of this stuff because she thought she loved him. Sure, she did. Obviously, she loved him, but was not, I don't know, the right way, the right motives. But she was willing to do all of that for him, and now she never sees him again. Was it worth that? How can we look at her life and see at times such strong trust, and then at other times such a strong lack of trust? But we understand that, don't we? That's so much like us, where we go through times when we can fully trust God and rest and let him work, and other times where we question and freak out. So who was Rebekah? Really, she was an ordinary woman. But what does her story tell us about God? Well, we know Rebekah was an answer to prayer, one that he was answering before it was even prayed. So he was in control of all these little details. She was a bride and a wife. She faced fertility struggles just like many women. And God was kind and gracious to her through that. He didn't leave her without answers. She had some serious doubt or maybe lack of trust. But God used her anyway. Imagine how the story could have been different. How would it have ended differently? What would have changed about their relationships? But it wouldn't have changed how God still got the glory, how God still worked his will. Because he still would have accomplished his will. We cannot mess up so badly that God cannot use us. And he just uses us in spite of ourselves and our own will to accomplish his will. So he's gracious to us when we don't understand, and he is always in control. And I think of all of that last, he's in control, that is something I need to hear every day right now, pretty much every hour, that God is always in control. So I'm going to pray. We'll be done. Dear God, thank you that you are all-knowing and never changing. And thank you that you have never changed all this time. You are the God of the Old Testament. You are the God of today. And Lord, you know how small our trust in you is, or how inconsistent we are. But thank you that you are true, that you love us, and that you will accomplish your will for your glory. And help us to rest in you, that you're in control. In Jesus' name.